Good, good. I was just telling the crowd how now, more than ever, like we have to work on our mindset right now. And I was telling these people that, it's like a lot of times they're waiting too much for the season. And it's like, that's the wrong, like, would you start your strength training in season? I think not.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And like, obviously your main focus is the mindset. I'd say, I guess my main focus would be the technique side of things. And it's the same thing. It's like, or they'll stop. They'll still have their training and they'll stop like the 3 months before the season starts.
Right.
And it's like, you got to keep that pattern going if you want to see that compounding, you
right.
know.
And as my coach always used to tell me, when do you usually do your best coaching? In season or out of season? When do you usually do your best coaching? I don't know. We never spoke about this before. I don't know. Maybe you're not going to say the right thing. What do you think?
When's my best coaching? I coach the same all the time. I don't know. It's
well, yeah, of course. But I mean, like, when do you feel like you could make the biggest impact? That's what I mean. Like, when do you feel
I kind of see it in the off season.
Yeah.
You can work the technique and you can,
exactly.
You don't focus on the weight cutting. There's other aspects. You don't have to focus on the nerves necessarily as much. You can get the things figured out before you actually have to implement them.
Exactly. It's like in the season, it's make weight, match. Oh, I got this little problem. I got to correct this problem. It's like, it's so intense and it's so like in the zone. Whereas now it's like we could take a step back and, hey, what do you work on? How do we get better at this? What do you have going on right now over at your gym and everything?
Yeah. So I know you talk with it would be my brother's wife, Caitlin. But yeah, so we have 2 wrestling gyms and we have jiu-jitsu as well and some other stuff. But, our main focus right now is we're trying to put a product together, which is our service that's going to encompass all aspects of wrestling. So technique, nutrition, strength, and mindset. And the last one, the nice thing that we're jumping on this call is that the mindset is the last thing I'm figuring out how to implement.
That's what we do. We got that
exactly,
that part's the easy part.
Exactly. So go ahead.
Yeah, we'll get that going. So you guys have that holistic club. And like we say, it's got to be looked at as strength training or technique. We got to build it in every day.
Yeah.
It's like what I tell people is before and after every workout, you have them stand up and do the mindset principles. No different than a karate dojo where they go through their code or whatever it is before their practice or whatever you call it. It's like that's what you would do. You'd have them do that. Then having, like a weekly mindset session with them where they're actually going through the mindset exercises, putting the pen to paper.
Definitely.
Right. So there's a ton we could talk about. We'll get into all that.
Yeah. And I wrestled at Drexel University Division I school in Philly.
Oh yeah, we're neighbors. I was at Penn.
All right. Perfect. Yeah.
When did you wrestle there?
I graduated 2020. So
okay, yeah, I was 07, a little bit older. They didn't have the OTC, the PRTC.
Yeah, they actually did. So Coach Slay, I don't know if they implemented it while I was there or not. I feel like they must have, like maybe like 2016 or something like that.
Yeah.
But Coach Slay, the PRTC coach, was I guess one of my freestyle coaches my last 3 or so years.
Was DeSanto there at that time?
Yep. So I was third year when it was his freshman year.
Oh man, he's intense.
Yeah.
And then how about Menino? Was Menino there?
Yep, Dante and Anthony, of course. They're like a couple of years younger than me.
Jersey boys. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Good. Yeah, man. I wish that we had the RTC back when I was competing because, I mean, when we wrestled Drexel, Penn was just a different level at the time and everything. But the guys in my weight were very, very good. So like the guy in my weight was Ryan Halushak. He and I split matches back and forth. He was an All-American at Drexel.
Yeah.
And Mark Cartella, the weight below him, 149, he was really good also. We were in the same weight in high school. He beat me in freestyle when I was a sophomore. So it's like those were 2 good guys. I would have really benefited from wrestling with Drexel, and they would have benefited too from being with me. Like we could have really helped each other.
I definitely agree, and that's part of like we're seeing that with our 2 clubs right now. They're like 45 minutes apart. But
are you near Philly?
No, we're actually up in New England. So that's where I was born. I was born in Rhode Island. Then went to Philly. Then now I moved back. I moved back for an engineering job, and then I quit the engineering job, and now I'm in the wrestling business. So
Where's your club?
Rhode Island.
Near Providence, like by Brown?
Yep. There's essentially like we have one below Providence and one to the right of Providence. And we do have a little bit of an alternating schedule. So like on Mondays, we'll have our guys from one club go get taught by other coaches and kind of work with some of our other wrestlers. And we're hoping that that can add that aspect, because I know a lot of kids are looking for like more practice partners, more coaches, but the problem sometimes with that is you don't build your own system.
Yeah.
When you're jumping a lot. So we're hoping to kind of almost like give people that desire to, maybe have a different practice partners, but still keep them within the system where they can keep progressing and finally like see their wrestling improve.
It's a good point. It's hard, and I always go back and forth with this in my head. That's why I feel like mindset's so important, because you're always balancing sometimes conflicting things. The way the Soviets did it is they have no more than 7-to-1 coach to athlete ratio. Different though, because the government paid them.
Yeah.
Right. It's different. It's a totally different thing. It's like if you could get by with coaching 7 guys and make ends meet, you have my blessing.
Yeah.
That's very hard, right? So it's like we don't have that system in America, right? So like ideally you would have one coach. Ideally, you'd have one coach who's like basically like your second father, who knows like the back of your hand, and he just knows you. And then you have the same system, because that continuity is important.
Yeah.
The difficult thing is now in like such an ADD generation, and not that I'm saying you should just cater to the generation. Maybe there's some balance in between, but it's like kids like always need that new stimulation, just because that's kind of like how their brains are wired. And it's like, I feel like, well, maybe we have to give this to them, otherwise they quit the sport. And it's like, well, it shouldn't be like that. They should stick it out. Yes, maybe that's the case. But if they're not wired like that, it's going to be so hard to get them to be wired like that. It's almost like, well, yeah, jump around and kind of find your place. And then it's like, oh, you're tired of this thing. It's hard, because ideally you would. I mean, I grew up with the model of stick with the same coach, because you have that continuity. So I feel like intellectually that makes the most sense. It's just hard. Yeah, I respect the challenges.
Yeah, and even going along that, I'm sure it's the same with the mental side of things. It's like, you're in the middle of learning the system, and you go and switch. If you're constantly switching and trying these different things out, you don't give yourself enough time to actually see if it works well. So I think a lot of times, like fundamentals, right? You teach your kids fundamentals, right? Before you start before you give them the reins to make their own stuff up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they have to learn these basics. I think it makes sense with mindset. I'm sure there's like these are the basics of mindset. You get these things down. Maybe later on, once you become an expert, you can kind of flow wrestle or make things up a little bit, or once you actually understand the basics. But that's another thing we struggle with, is like kids want to know they want to push past the fundamentals, but I know like that's what's going to make them successful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why it's always because you're balancing the two. It's like, okay, what's the exact optimal coach, but you're also a businessman, and it's like people don't like to hear that, but it's like you got to make money. You got to make money, and it's not a matter of like, oh, hey, we're trying to do wrong by the kids. I mean, it's great that we get to help kids for a living, but we got to make money too. Otherwise, we got to go to work. We got to get a real job. Yeah. And it's like the entrepreneurs, it's like as mentally tough as we are, we'll work 80 hours a week so we don't have to work 40.
100%.
But it's true. It's very hard, because I think like with competing, and I see this with a lot of wrestling clubs, a lot of club coaches will say they recommend starting kids later, competing later, wrestle, but compete later in time. The difficult thing is if the kid wants to compete and the parent really wants to compete, it's hard, because they'll leave you and they'll go. I mean, in New Jersey, it's like we got clubs every street corner. They'll just go to the other corner, and you're trying to keep them too. So it's like, you got to know obviously what you believe, but at the same time, it's like being able to kind of work with the world. It's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard.
100%.
Like, or look at clinics. In clinics, you could run a wrestling clinic, and it's like, okay, this is what the kids should learn. But a lot of them are losing interest. They don't want to do it. And then you show a couple junk moves, and they're like, oh, man, this is cool. Wrestling's so awesome.
Yeah.
You might keep a few kids that way. And we're not saying just trying to strive for, like, cheap thrills and, like, well, because a lot of those kids who dropped off probably would have dropped off anyway. but it's like it's always that delicate balance, And I think
Definitely.
as long as you're trying to balance it, yeah, it's. I mean, what can you do? You do the best you can, and that's why you got to be attuned and aware so you can make those little adjustments.
Definitely.
No,
Definitely. Now, a little bit of the mindset stuff. So, like when I was at Drexel, our coach, we actually had like a sports psychologist for the whole like athletic department, and she would come in and do certain things with us. Like, so I don't have. That's my background and mindset. Now, I didn't necessarily don't have any training, but I went through like the experience of what other coaches were trying to get me to do. And one of the biggest benefits I actually saw was we did a gratitude journal. So like once a
yeah,
week, our coach had journals like in a box, and each person had their journal. And that for me, out of all the other stuff, sometimes we like visualize matches, we would like work on other stuff, other mindset related things. But for me, that gratitude journal was the biggest thing to keep me motivated to train hard. You know what I mean? Like when you're having those days where you're like, I don't feel like training, like everything's going wrong for me, and you just sit there and you just like list off the things you're happy for. Because most of the time, it's your life may not even be different than the day before,
exactly.
but your mindset's different. You know what I mean? Your life, some little thing that ticked you off today didn't really bother you the day before. You know what I mean? So that's something I liked. And again, like I told you, I'm trying to figure out exactly the way we want to implement it. One of our coaches used to give like little talks, you know what I mean? End of practice talks kind of thing. I think that might be a good option. Obviously you guys have a whole system for yourselves, but
Yeah, that's what you're really looking at. You want that system because a lot of coaches, like all coaches, talk to their kids after, and it's great. Like you need to, like coaches do need to communicate. The difficult thing is they're not actually going through the mindset exercise. Like just to talk to the kids, they're not actually training their brain. Just like it's like you could talk to a kid about what exercises they should be doing strength wise or what techniques they should be doing. If the kids don't drill the moves, if the kids don't pick up the weights, get on the rope, go for the run, they don't actually improve. It's the same thing with mindset. They have to do the exercises. So we got all these exercises we could set you guys up with. You really want them putting the pen to paper and doing it. Like this day and age, I tell people all the time, if you think you're going to maximize your potential without formal work on your mindset, you are sorely mistaken. Like you got another thing coming because there's people out there who are training their minds. They're doing it right. So like you said, that gratitude journal, that's huge. And then what you do, you probably wrote it down. You probably wrote down.
yeah,
You didn't just
give
think.
you
You
a
didn't
pen.
just think about. That's the gold right there. Not just thinking about it in your head. You could think about the things you're thankful for when you write it down, and you could see it in your own handwriting. That's powerful. That's accessing different parts of your brain. Now, and that's just one example of an exercise. So that's what you really want them doing. So we'll come up with all that. Like I said, we help teams and clubs all the time. We'll put a plan in place. That's big, and that's good for everyone else watching that, that's something you got to be taking the bull by the horns. The best teams, the best clubs, they're starting to incorporate mindset. It's catching on. I feel like, especially after one whole generation of coaches leave, then it's going to be like the holistic approach is in. Because we still
Yeah.
have some people who are, there's still the people who are a little bit set in their ways where, oh, just be tough, just be tough. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Just be tough. I'm sure so are you. But
Yeah.
it's like, we got to work on our mind. We got to actually put the pen to paper too. It's like, that's not going to cut it. There's a lot of kids who are tough that are just struggling mentally. So it's like, I feel like once we have that generation of coaches that retire, then mindset is going to be like a constant thing.
Yeah, and it's like to me it's very clear looking from the outside that mindset has to be a component. When you see a kid dominate in the practice room and not do well in a match, that's just it. There's no other. They're training hard. Their nutrition obviously can't be that big of a deal. Their strength training wouldn't make it any difference. It's that mindset component. And I think the thing that happens is a lot of those coaches didn't maybe have a problem with their mindset. They didn't have an issue as much with that. It's like a guy that's super strong naturally that didn't need to do any weights and just did push-ups, and he's like, oh, you shouldn't do weight training. And I think sometimes like the coaches that were able to be successful maybe without doing a component that they didn't really struggle with, might preach that it's not needed. And then on top of that, doesn't mean if they did do those exercises that when they wouldn't even push even further. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even if they were good.
Exactly. Like they might think they didn't need it in terms of like, hey, I was able to succeed. But if they think back to their career, was I enjoying myself while I was competing? Was I wrestling to my potential just about every match? Did I let stress get to me? How is this affecting other areas of my life? You dig deep, you see it's just like the body. It's
Yeah.
like we all have, like even Schwarzenegger, you look at his, okay, he needed to bring his calves, he needed to bring his calves up. Tom Platz, like he needed to get his upper body caught up with his lower body. Like it's not like it's a weakness, but it's a relative weakness compared to where you're good everywhere else. So it's like, it's the same thing with mindset. You could, different mental muscles. You could be highly motivated, struggle a little bit with confidence, or a little bit with aggressiveness, or a little bit with relaxing under pressure. It's not like confidence and motivation stay like this. They go up and down with each match and throughout the course of a season, and with each weight cut and with injuries. Confidence and motivation go up and down. So that's why it's something that needs to be neutralized throughout your career. It's not just like, oh, hey, we come in and we talk about mindset once and it's done. That's like really archaic thinking.
Yeah.
And
that's the same way, like I said there's four main components we try to focus on, right? Technique, nutrition, strength, and mindset. I wasn't great with my nutrition, right? And
either. Yep.
and I feel like my career was good, but I always wonder, like, well, what if I had that dialed in?
Could have been better. It could, and that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
No matter who it is, even if it's, you're looking at a quarterback, even Tom Brady, how as great as he is, he could be better. Like everyone can be better, and that's the Gable principle that you can never reach 100% of your potential. So it's like cross your T's, dot your I's, and go to clubs like yours who are actually at least thinking about, all aspects of the sport. Is there a plan in place? Most coaches, it's not even on the radar, or if it is, there's like no even attempt to work that in. So no, that's good. That's good stuff. Keep up the good work. What do you have going on the rest of the summer?
We have an overnight camp that we do with our wrestler.
Good.
That's something we may tap into next summer, but we do it with just our members though. So just our members, high school members, overnight camp, wrestling hard, have some team bonding stuff. That's something I'm always super excited about. One of the coolest things we did this summer though is I took 12 of my guys to Drexel to wrestle for a week straight, and it wasn't most camps. It's like the Drexel wrestlers are the helpers, right? The camp counselors. This was a camp where morning session was just our guys and the Drexel coaches, and then the night session was just our guys practicing with their guys. So we just tagged along onto their camp, which really only happens for people that are highly recruited, right? The only people that are getting those type of experiences a lot of times are the people that are getting recruited. And we had a lot of guys that were JV on their Rhode Island high school team, and they got the opportunity to go wrestle with the, New Jersey State Placers, Division I wrestlers, nationally ranked guys. So that was super exciting. That was the first year we did that. And another thing that we got coming up it's more like implementing into the program. You ever heard of Athletes Ocean, the thing that Jason Nolf is doing with his techniques?
Something like that. Yeah.
It's like an app, right? That has like you can put your own wrestling techniques into it. And one of the things we've created is a belt system for wrestling, kind of to help with retention. Cool. Yeah, and to help the kids learn the technique.
I like that because like when you compete all the time, you're thinking so much about winning and losing, and you might be winning and losing, but are you developing skills or are you just a stud? Right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people look at it the wrong way. They're like, oh, it's going to make them less competitive. But I'm like, no. The problem is the people that win early athleticism, they don't have another incentive to develop the skills. Right. My headlock works. My whatever random move that's not even a technique works because I'm freakish. I'm a freak athlete. But now we go, well, you're not going to get promoted unless you know a proper single, double, high crotch. And we don't go. And the nice thing is that it helps all the staff be on the same page. Yeah. Nothing's written down or no program is written down. Then it's like, well, what are we really teaching our kids? And sometimes there's some confusion there.
I like that you do that because I think that's good because it cues both the athlete and the coaches to, hey, there's something else we're focusing on too. Yeah. And it's easy for all of us. It's easy for all of us to get sucked into the results. And it's like, hey, skill development. How do you break it down? Like, how do you break down the skills for the promotion?
Yeah. So
Or are you still working on that? Is that still?
no, we finished it. The main thing we're changing it is it used to be just like a list of a bunch of videos. Now it's put into courses. It's almost finished up. Essentially, before the kids get tested, they have to watch the video, answer a question on the video, like finish the course. And I'm gonna see like, did you finish the course? Because before we couldn't really track whether they were watching it or not. It was just like supplementary material. But that's the thing we're at it. But how it's broken down is there's 5 levels. All right. After the first 6 weeks, they get their like white belt, right? And they get a little test. That's pretty much kind of like an easy test, like getting a stance, sprawl, penetration shots, single. The way you hit a single is a little different than a double or high crotch, so they'll hit both of those types of shots, sprawls, and then it goes on to level 2, which is can you hit a single, double, high crotch on your feet, finishing on your feet. Can you do each breakdown, arm chop, spiral. I like cradles a lot for top, especially for people beginning. Obviously halves too, but some things with half Nelson, it works really good in youth. It becomes very difficult to hit at the higher level. So it's like a necessity to teach it, but I don't think it's actually that effective when you get into college as much. But that's just like a side note. And then as levels increase, it's not learning a bunch of random moves. It's can you finish the progression? So you hit a single, you finish on your feet. Okay, next level. You hit a single, they sprawl. Can you finish backside? Can you come out the back door now? Can you cut and go to double? Same thing with high crotch, same thing with double. And as they go along with the levels, it's not necessarily how million of moves can you learn. It's how well do you hit these moves when your partner's giving you a look. You know, when your partner's sprawling. So we didn't want it because we wanted the system to encourage them to get better, but also actually make them better, right? Like it can't be just like now they know 1,000 moves and now they can't hit anything. It's like there's a level 1 to hitting a single, and there's a level 5 to hitting a single, or there's a level 1 to hitting a double, and then there's a Jordan Burroughs double, and that means you graduated pretty much.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good market too. You come up with if you're able to come up with. You have the belt system, and then it's like a kid submits the video, and they got to pay to get the video submitted. Where it's like, okay, do it once shadow, do it once with a partner, do it once in competition, and it's like you have a couple skills. I don't even know how you do it, but it's like something like that. And then it's like they pay for you to evaluate them, and then once you evaluate them, then you mail them a belt, and they have a belt. That'd be cool. That'd be a cool belt system. That like it'd be cool for like USA Wrestling, but obviously it takes like any business. It's you got to be all in with that. But no, it's cool. I just like the idea of a belt system or coaches having some way to evaluate the kids based like a more structured way to evaluate them. Just because you're right, it gives them something to shoot for other than the wins and the losses.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily want a 5-year-old just all his mindset all warped up on wins and losses. You know what I mean? You want them to focus on getting their technique better, and
because they lose eventually.
Yeah.
And then what? And
then they quit.
And it's like, it's like, well, you just wrestled a kid who was actually a bigger stud than you. And it's like, well, but who cares? It's like neither of you knew how to wrestle. It's like you didn't know how to wrestle. He didn't know how to wrestle. Even though you dominate all the other kids, it's like, well, what good is that? We're just brawling.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, that's good. All right, so where do we tell people to find you? Where do they go? How could they get more information of what you do and everything?
Yeah, 100%. You can follow, obviously, me on Instagram, and then Iron Faith Grappling on Instagram as well. We'll put out any updates there. And yeah, right now our focus is on our members, but I think as we grow, we're hoping to have a product similar to what you guys have, not with Mindset, but maybe like you said, with laces or something like that. So if you're interested in keeping up to date with that laces system or our techniques, and yeah, follow us on Instagram, either my personal one or at Iron Faith Grappling.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. We'll talk about implementing Mindset over at your place too.
All right, sounds
All right.
good.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.